What's up, folks? Welcome to today's episode of the Greg and Earl Reloading Show. Today, the first thing we're going to talk about, we got lots of fans from all over the place that watches our show, and a lot of times we get fan mail, and in that, they tell us about how much they enjoy the show and things like that. Sometimes there's questions. We got a lot of questions about last week's episode. I wanted to, we got a bunch of them focused on one thing, and that's the load data that we fill out on the label. So a lot of people had some of the same kind of questions. I'm just going to take one in particular since he kind of covered it all. Now this one is from Howard S. from Washington, Tacoma. Is Tacoma a state? Hey, Earl. Earl is Earl. Passed out again. Anyway, I don't think Tacoma is a state. I think Tacoma might be I think it's a country down in like Bolivia or something like that. But, well, I don't know because he wrote this, he didn't write it in German. So I don't think it's down there. I don't know. But anyway, so Howard S. from Washington, Tacoma, he says, he made a bunch of comments about the labels. And basically what he was saying was he didn't understand why you had to fill out some of the things on the load data label. So I'm going to talk about that. Caliber, in this case, we got caliber 9. Now, you might be wondering, why is it important to track the caliber? Well, for example, this is not a caliber 9 cartridge. So if I try to put this in a caliber 9 handgun, probably some bad things are going to happen. I've never tried it myself. I probably wouldn't want to try it. I don't know. Well, I might try it sometime just to see what happens. But anyway, so that's why it's important to keep track of the caliber. Now, powder, his comment, what he said was, why would you ever not load powder? So why would you need to have whether or not there was powder in there? Well, there is a possible reason for that. You see, the best thing that I can think of is the way to describe this is back when we was kids, me and Earl, we used to have these BB gun wars. We'd go out and pretend we was cops and robbers or whatever. We had our Daisy Rider BB guns and we'd shoot each other with them. They'd leave a little bit of a mark, It hurt a little bit, but and then Earl one year for Christmas, he got one of them. It was a Daisy 820 or something. I don't know, but anyway, it was one of them BB guns that you pumped up. Now, if you just pumped that thing once, and it hurt a little bit more than the Red Ryder did. But when I got one because I had to keep up with Earl because he was winning a lot. So when I got mine, I thought I'd be sneaky. I pumped it up like 5 or 6 times. Earl never did forgive me for that one. But nonetheless. Anyway, so the reason you might want to load one of these without the powder is because with the primer installed, okay, once there's a primer in the case, you don't have to put powder or the boom juice in here, okay? You could just go ahead and put your bullet in there. Now, what's going to happen is it's still just the explosion from the primer is still going to make that bullet come out. Hopefully, you might have to put a little bit of powder. Depends on the gun, You have to do a little bit of testing for that. But anyway, so the best thing I can come up with is that we're probably talking about kind of the you don't want to let your kids do this. This is probably like the adult version of the BB gun wars. You don't want to have powder in there if you have an adult version of the BB gun wars. Now, of course, in the case of the powder, if you got none, you just leave that blank. So it'd be powder, no, what the? See, it's just blank. There's nothing there because there's no powder. So then bullet. In our last episode, we loaded some shiny bullets. In this case, we got bullet, yes, what the candy apple red. In this particular case, we got some candy apple red bullets here. Oh wait, this is the wrong box. See, we're gonna unedit this. We don't edit things here on the Greg and Earl Reloading show. I may have made a mistake on the labels here. See, it's very important not to do that. You got to be accurate with this stuff. So this here, this is the candy apple red. Those is shiny. I need to fix that label. But anyway, you can see this bullet is the candy apple red bullet. You can get them in some different things. Now, why might you want some candy apple red bullets? Well, let me tell you. On the Greg and Earl Reloading show, when it comes time for Halloween around here, we don't like to give the kids candy because, quite frankly, it's not good for them. It does bad things to their teeth. Just take a look at Earl sometimes, you see what too much candy does. Anyway, so we like to give out something a little bit better and a little bit more healthy than your typical candy, sugar-filled candy. So we have found that, you know, kids love bullets. That's the bottom line of it. They just love bullets. But even more than bullets, they love candy apple red bullets. I don't know what it is about them, but they just love them to death. Okay? So that's why you might want some different, you know, types of bullets, and you want to keep track of that. The other thing is primer. Primer, yes. Now, why might you want to load a bullet without a primer? I don't know. I don't honestly know why you would load a bullet without primer. You could do it, but the problem is, and I tried this, but there is a flaw in doing that, and that is without the primer in there, your boom juice, it just leak right out the bottom. It just go all over the place. So you really don't want to do that. I don't know why. I mean, it's not going to go boom. Maybe you want to make a bullet that looks like a bullet that doesn't go boom. I don't know. Maybe simulate some sort of failure to fire. You know, maybe you're doing some tap rack bang drills or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, you can do it. And if you do it, you want to make sure you keep track of it. So one of the other questions, now this comes from Harold J. from Taimanium, Maryland. First thing that we got to get out the way here, Harold, is you need to move, okay? Because you live in a town that is not easy to pronounce, and you just, before you write any more fan mail to you, move. You just need to get up out there and move somewhere with an easily pronounceable name. That's number one. But now, Harold's question, or comment, as I should say, was about the time loaded. And Harold seems to think, he disagrees with me a little bit, that the S, where it says times loaded, is a mistake. Now, I said that it was a mistake and it's time loaded. Morning, afternoon, evening, whatever. Harold says that that's not a mistake, and that the times loaded, see, technically speaking, every time I run a cartridge through this press, that's a cycle. Okay, so this is a progressive press. Now there's some single stage presses where you do things in a different way, but we're going to talk about this one. This is progressive. So when I run this through and it goes through its actions and does everything as I'll explain in a moment, when it's done, it goes in looking like this. This is what the brass looks like when it goes in. This is what the brass looks like when it comes out. So you can see we got a primer, we got our boom juice in there, and we got a bullet up in here. Okay, so it goes from this to this. Now what he's saying is, he's saying that if you run it through multiple cycles, he's saying that is to record how many times this brass has went through a cycle. Harold, you need, if you are considering reloading, you need to just give up that dream. Don't do it. Don't do it. If you're already reloading, you need to just sell all your stuff or throw it in the garbage. That's probably even better, because you don't even want to sell something that you don't know nothing about, because you don't know nothing about reloading, clearly. Because here's the thing, Harold has no idea what he's doing. Let me explain something. This die right here, when I put a piece of brass in here, this is the very first thing that it's going to go to. Okay, this die is called a sizing die, and one of the things it has is right in the middle. It has what's called a decapping pin. So when you have a piece of brass that has been picked up off the field, because that's what we do, we go down to the range and we just walk through the range and we look for brass, and we'll pick it up, bring it home, reload it. It's got a primer in it. That primer's already used up. You can't use them more than once. So when it goes into the sizing die, that little rod that's in the middle there will push that primer out, and it goes down in this pretty little red, this candy apple too, pretty little red jug that I got down here at the bottom. So it's going to push that out. Now that rod is right in the middle of that die. So now normally this goes up into the die, and the priming rod goes right through the middle and pushes the primer out the back. Well, you can tell, Harold, what's going to happen if I try to put this through a second time. It's going to hit this bullet. That rod is going to hit this bullet. It's going to wedge up in there sideways, and all hell is going to break. I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep this family friendly, but I can't say it any other way. All hell is going to break loose when you try to jam this thing up in there with a bullet already in it. You cannot run this through more than one cycle. That's it. You can't do it. Once it comes out and it drops in your bin, you can't run it through there again. Okay? That's it. You can't. Not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times. So why on earth would you be trying to keep track of how many times you ran it through a cycle? That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Harold, please don't reload. That's all I got to say about that. Like I said, there's a whole lot more I could say, but we're trying to keep it family friendly here on the show, so I'm just going to leave it at that. So that's it. We had a lot of other questions, comments, but we only get so much time because our show's so popular. The networks, they likes to put in like lots of commercials, so we only get a little bit of time, and then the commercials get their time. So we're going to keep it a little bit short. All right. So we're going to talk about loading some rounds today. This is the main point of our show on this episode. So we're going to be loading some. This is a 308 cartridge. Okay. This is what we're going to load. Now, we are going to be loading a specific type of 308 today. The specific type is called a 308 SWR. The SWR stands for Skeeter Wing Remover. Okay? What that means is that from 100 yards away, you can remove the wings off of a skeeter while it's flying in the air with these rounds. That's how accurate they is. Okay? But to get that kind of accuracy, you got to be very, very accurate with everything you do. And we're going to talk about how to do that. So we're going to talk about how to make SWR rounds today. Now, first thing we need to do, we don't need to worry about the press yet, because when we're making SWR rounds, we need to do some things first. First thing we need to do, whenever we put one of these cartridges in a rifle and fires it, it's going to get just a little bit longer. Brass is going to stretch just a little bit. So the first thing we got to do is we got to make sure all our brass is the same size. That's where this little device here comes in. There's all kinds of devices to do this. This one, I believe, is made by Lee. Kind of like the General Lee. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so this is the one that I found that I prefer. I really like this one. It's the one I use. You just slide it in like that, and you tighten this down. That holds your brass right there. It ain't going nowhere now. This part here, this is labeled. It says 308. Okay, that's what we're doing. 308. So that's what we put in there. This goes in your drill. Now I'm not going to tell you what kind of drill you got to use. And we don't have, we aren't sponsored by anybody here, any specific drill manufacturer. But I'm going to tell you, you better be using DeWalt, because DeWalt makes the good stuff. Okay, so put this in your DeWalt drill. Then you're going to start up the drill. You're going to take this and you're going to push it in, and this is going to be spinning, okay? And down here it's got blades, and it's going to cut that brass down. This is going to hit the pin on the very back side, which is going to stop it, and then it's going to spin, and it's going to make that brass the right size, okay? That's number one thing you're going to do. The next thing you're going to do, after you got it the right size, we got to do a little bit more, because we cut the neck, but we got to do a little bit more work. So what we're going to do, now this is after you cleaned it. You want to make sure you clean and dry your brass too, because it's got to be shiny. Okay, you can't be putting Dahl on there. Next thing, after that, you're going to take a brush. You're going to run a brush down in there. Next thing I like to do, I like to deep prime my cases first. Some people don't do it, but if I'm making SWR rounds, I do it first. Then I take a little primer pocket cleaner. Goes right up in here, and you just spin it a couple times, or you can put it on your tool, and it'll clean out that primer pocket. Make sure there's nothing in there that's going to hold you up or do anything weird, okay? Then you got to do something. It's called camber and chamfer, okay? That's what it's called, camber and chamfer, okay? What you're going to do there, and I like to use, I got this little power tool here, right? So you can put a couple of tools. You can use it for the primer pocket cleaner. You can use different stuff. Anyway, one of these is your camber tool, and one's your chamfer tool. You're just going to spin it up. You're just going to hit a little bit like that, and hit a little bit like that. That's all you're going to do. You're not going to have, when you put it in the cutter, you're going to see brass flying everywhere, because you want to cut the brass off that's stretched. With this, you're not going to see that. You don't want that. You want to leave the case the way it is. You're just making the edge just kind of flare it a little bit and make it a nice, think of it, you can kind of think of it like after we cut the brass down, you can think, there's like little burrs and imperfections and stuff, and this is kind of like coming back behind it with some sandpaper and just kind of making it real nice, okay? That's what's going to happen. That's what you got to do. Once you got your brass prepared, now we're going to get into the press. Unless you deep prime first and you're using the press to deep prime, you can do that too. Now, if I'm doing that, what I like to do is I like to use this here Imperial Sizing Die Wax. This is good stuff. You just rub a little bit on your fingers and rub it on the case and stick it in there and go. Now, once I've got it a little bit coating the inside of this die, and some on my cases anyway, because I've deep primed, when I go for the second run, most of the time what I do with that is I'll just use this one-shot case lube. Just spray her on there. She's good to go. She's ready to go. Why you want to lube your cases? You don't want to get a case stuck up in here, and it can happen. Okay? If you don't have some lubrication on there, you can get it stuck. And when it's stuck, it's going to rip this whole back end thing, this rim right off, and you're going to be in a mess. You're going to be in a world of hurt. That's what's going to happen. They make a special tool to get some stuff out. I suggest you get one of those, because you might have a stuck. I've been doing this a lot of years, folks, and I can tell you right now that that tool ain't never been opened, because I make sure to lube everything, okay? But it can happen. You might forget to lube. You might have something weird with the case. It's hard to tell. It might happen, okay? If it happens, you want the tool to be able to get it out, because otherwise you're not going to get that thing out there, okay? So we got our stations set up, okay? Each one of these places along the way is a station. So I'm going to describe real quick what we're going to go through. We're going to put a brass in here. The first station it's going to get to is our sizing die, okay? Now it's not going to deprime, right? Because we already did that ahead of time. But it's going to size the case. It's going to go up in there. It's going to make sure everything's sized right. And our neck, okay, cartridge, this right here, this is the neck. See how this is thick down here and big, and down here it gets small, just like me. Right here, thick and big, and then it gets small right here. See, this is my neck. This is this neck, okay? That's how it works. That's how you can remember it. Now, it's going to go up in there. When it goes up in there, there's something in here called a bushing, a neck bushing, okay? You can change those out. You can get different sizes, okay? Whatever size neck bushing you use, that's what's going to determine the neck tension. What the neck tension is how much pressure that neck is putting on this bullet. Okay? So if I take a case here that hasn't been sized yet, you can see the bullet, it just slides in and out of there just like that, right? But if we look at a case that's been through the sizing die, you can see, well, actually that one does. Sorry about that. That one must not have been through the sizing die. Here, one been through the sizing die. See? It gets up there and it stops. That's because it's got neck tension. So when we seat this bullet down in there, it's going to hold it, okay? These particular type of bullets, because they're SWR rounds especially, we don't have no crimp. It's not going to crimp down on the bullet. And some bullets have crimp rings where that crimps down into. This don't have that, you see. So it's just the neck tension that's going to hold it. That's going to give you more accuracy, okay? Now, next thing we're going to hit is right here. This is a primer, okay? This is where we're going to insert the primer into the back of the cartridge. Next thing it's going to do is it's going to come up here and hit our powder measure. Now, we can't use a powder measure to measure the powder. Remember, this is for little bit mores. When we're making our SWR rounds, we need more accuracy than the little bit mores can give us. A little bit more is pretty accurate, but we need more accuracy than that. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this to however many little bit mores gets us real close to the amount of that we actually need. How do we know the amount that we actually need? That comes by testing, trial and error, okay? But we need to measure it in something a little bit more accurate than a little bit mores, okay? That might seem confusing to you, but bear with me, okay? What we're going to measure it in is something called Geronimos, okay? Now, the Geronimos, it's easy to think of. It's just a normal thing, just like a little bit more. If you got one little bit more, 10 little bit mores, 10 little bit mores is more, right? Geronimos, think of it like somebody just running out, Geronimo, right? This bullet comes up out of there, goes Geronimo. You got more Geronimos, it's going to come out faster, okay? It's going to have more Geronimos behind it, all right? So you want to make sure your measure, whatever your scale you're using to measure your stuff with, can do Geronimos, okay? So when I turn this on, I look here and I want to make sure that I see that it's set for Geronimos. Right now it's not. It's set for something called OZ, okay? That's Oz, okay? We can't use Oz. Now what Oz is for people in Australia, okay? You've probably heard the term, you're familiar with it, but just in case you're not, it's pretty complicated, okay? But I'll try to describe it the best I can. If you look at a globe, okay, and yes, folks, it's a globe. Don't listen to Earl. Earl will try to tell you some of that bull crap about it being flat. It's not flat. It's a globe, okay? We's up here on the top, right? Not right on the top, but kind of on the top. Australia, if you look, is down here on the bottom, okay? So you gotta understand gravity. If you don't know much about gravity, you can look it up, okay? Get out your cell phone, go to the thing. There's an app. It's called Goggle. Okay, you can goggle things. So type in gravity into Goggle, and it'll come up and tell you all about it. You can learn all about it. Okay, learn something today. So now, what you want to do is think about the fact that gravity is pulling down. So for us up here, it's pulling down. Gravity has to do with weight. Okay, mass, weight, gravity, they're all related. You can goggle that, okay? Learn a little bit more about it. But the weight is because gravity is pulling down. Now down here in Australia, if you think about it, they're down here on the bottom, right? So they're kind of upside down. So gravity's going to be pulling up for them, okay? So that's going to change the weight. So if they try to measure something down there in Geronimos, it's going to be wrong because gravity's pulling the wrong way, okay? So we don't want to measure in Oz's, okay? Instead, we need to switch and change the switch and make sure we're measuring in Geronimos, okay? Now, once we've made sure we got that, we need to get our little bit more set close. How do we know how many Geronimos we need? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to find some load data. So we're going to look up 308. Okay, you can goggle it. And whatever powder, like today, we're going to use this Accurate 2495. That's the powder we're using, the boom juice. Okay, so you can goggle that and find some load data that's going to tell you some different ranges. Now we're trying to get a certain muzzle velocity. What that muzzle velocity is has a lot to do with the rifle we're shooting out of. So you might want to look either for other people that use your rifle, you can look that up, goggle it, or you can do some testing. There's something called a ladder test. If you don't know what a ladder test is, it's kind of like the little bit more test I was talking about, where you just wait till you blow the slide off and then you know you need to back up a little bit. But it's kind of like that, except for it's a little bit different. But it's going to tell you at the end of it how many Geronimos you need. Now, again, if you don't know what the ladder test is or how to do it, you can goggle it, get all the information you need. Okay? Now, once we know, so in this case, I know that I need 43 Geronimos in each one of these cartridges. So that's what we're going for, is 43. So we're going to set this so we get pretty close to 43 Geronimos. This particular powder is a stick powder. It means it's not little balls, okay? It's little sticks, okay? Powder measure ain't going to be real accurate. It's going to have changes, okay? We was loading typical rounds, just something to go out to the range with, that'd be fine. We're not loading typical rounds. We're trying to load a round that we can take the wings off of a skeeter at 100 yards. Okay? We need to be more accurate than that. So, we're going to get it set close, and that's it. Then, what we're going to do is after it pours out the powder, we're going to check it. We're going to pour it into our scale and see how many Geronimos we got. And we're going to adjust it. We got here a powder trickler. What's a powder trickler do is we turn the knob, it's going to trickle out little tiny pieces of powder. And we're going to keep doing that until we get the right amount. Or we might have to take some out. It depends. Okay? Once we get the right amount of Geronimos, then on the next cycle, the next station it hits, it's going to come up here and it's going to lift this funnel a little bit. And it's going to be sitting there waiting for a powder. We're going to put our powder back in the cartridge. Okay? And then the next cycle it's going to hit is this right here. This is our bullet seeder. Okay? So, this one's a little bit different. This is a little bit more accurate because we're making the SWR rounds. Okay? So, in a lot of seeding dies, as this is called, you just put the bullet down in the thing and then it goes up and it pushes. Okay? In this particular one, we have this window here and we can drop it in. We also got this little dial here that we can set how many Geronimos, or how deep we want that seated. How do we know how deep we want it seated? We need to measure the chamber in the rifle. Again, it's too complicated to cover in this process right here, but I can tell you the rifle we're going to shoot these out of, the chamber, till it meets the rifling, okay, till the ogive meets the rifling. Now the ogive is kind of a weird thing, okay? It's not to the tip because that can change, okay? The rifling is bigger than that tip. So if this thing's got a real long skinny tip on it, we don't care how long the bullet itself is, okay? What we care about is where the bullet is actually going to hit the rifling. That's called the ogive, okay? It's an old word. A lot of people misspell it. A lot of people misspell it because it sounds like it's spelled O-J-I-V-E, ogive. It's not spelled that way. It's spelled O-G-I-V-E. You can goggle that too. It'll tell you all about it. Anyway, so we're gonna measure that. We're gonna find where the rifling starts in our rifle. Okay. In my particular rifle, that's at 2.215. Okay. So, we need to be a little bit behind that, preferably. So, in our particular case, I want my ogive to set at 2.205. Okay? How do we measure that? We measure that with one of these things. This is called a caliper, and this is an ogive measuring device. Okay? So, we're going to take this in. We're going to turn it on, zero out our scale. You open this up. You set the bullet in here like this, and then the back of the cartridge will back up to the thing, and sometimes you got to move it around just a little bit to find the lowest point, and we got 2.2055. Well, folks, that's close enough, 2.205, okay? So that's how we're going to know. And if you need more, you can adjust it here. You can put one in, measure it, and then because of the markings on here, you know how far you need to go, and you can actually adjust this, and it'll be right on the money, okay? That's how we're going to do it. Now, once the bullet's seated, it's done. You're done. You got yourself an SWR round. So we're going to go ahead and run through a couple. One thing you got to be aware of is when you're using one of these progressive presses like this, sometimes it can get a little bit complicated, okay? It's a little bit weird because you have to keep track of everything. So what I like to do is I like to put everything out in an order, okay? So in this case, I got brass, I got bullet, I got powder, okay? So that's the order that they appear in here. So I know if I got an empty slot here, I need brass. I know if I've got a cartridge here, I need a bullet. And I know if I got a cartridge here, I need to measure the powder, okay? So brass, bullet, cartridge. Brass, bullet, powder. We're going to do that over and over and over. Brass, bullet, powder. So let's start. Do we have an empty slot here? We do. We know we need brass. So we're going to put the brass in there. Then we're going to crank this thing up. And in this case, we don't have any powder measured out, so we don't need to dump any powder. We pull it down. This is where we're going to seat our primer. You want to make sure you push back on that to make sure that primer gets seated up in there. Now, we've completed one station in our cycle. Now, we do our same process. Brass. Do we need brass? Yes, we do. So we put the brass in there. Do we need a bullet? No, we don't. Do we need to measure powder? No, we don't. There's no cartridges in there, folks. So we're going to do it again. Now you can see this time our powder measure moved. That's because it's putting some powder in there, okay? We come back down. We make sure we seat our primer. Now we start the cycle again. Brass? Yes, we do. Bullet? No, we don't. Powder? No, we don't. Do it again. Come up, come down, make sure we seat our primer. Okay? That's it. Now, do a cycle again. Brass. There it is. Do we need a bullet? No. Do we need to measure powder? Yes, we do. We do need to measure powder because we got a cartridge in this slot. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull this out, make sure we're set for Geronimo's and we're zeroed out. Then we're going to dump all that powder into our measure. And we're going to put the cartridge back in the same place we took it from. Now we got 43.8 Geronimo's. Okay, that's too much. That's too many Geronimo's. So we're going to take this out and we're going to dump a little bit out of our trickler, or into our trickler. Now we got 42.9 Geronimo's. Now we're going to turn this and we're going to turn it. And now we got 43 Geronimo's. That's perfect. So now we've done our 3 steps. We do our crank. Okay? So we come up. Now in this case we need to stop right here because we saw this funnel move up. This is the next part of the process. We got powder on our scale. That means we need to put it back. So we take this, we dump it back in here. Give it a couple taps just to make sure it's clear. Now we complete the cycle. We come back down, make sure we seat our primer. Okay? Now, same process. Brass? Yes, we need brass. Do we need a bullet? Yes, we do, because we got a cartridge in the bullet slot now. So we're going to take our bullet, we're going to put it, drop it down in our little window there. Now, do we need to measure powder? Yes, we do. So we pull this off, make sure we're zeroed, we're on Geronimo's. We dump it out, put it back where it came from. Okay? Now we look at this. We got 43.7 Geronimo's. Too much. dump some out. We got 42.7, so we're going to turn this up until we come back to 43. 42.9, 43 Geronimos right there. That's it. Now, normally, I'm not going to do it for this case because we'll keep it going. But normally, since I keep coming out over, I'd back this down just a little bit more. Okay, maybe one or two little bit mores. Just to make sure we came in under. That way I can come up and I don't have to keep dumping out and then come back up. Okay, just save yourself a little step. So now, we run our process. We come up. We want to make sure when we hit this press here, it usually does a good job, but we want to make sure this little black collar there goes up and around. That's going to make sure we're good and centered and everything's good. So we come back up. Now, we got our powder. We know we need to dump. We dump it out. Put that back on our scale. Give it a couple of taps. We come back down. And you can see there, we got ourselves a round. Okay? Now, since this is the first round that came out, first thing I'm going to do is turn this on. I'm going to put it in here, and I'm going to measure it. Move it around a little bit, make sure we get the lowest reading that we're going to get out of it. And we got 2.2055. Perfect. Right on the money. Doesn't get any better than that. So we got ourselves a good round right there. Okay? Now, we start a process over again. Do we need brass? Yes, we do. Do we need a bullet? Yes, we do. Do we need to measure powder? Yes, we do. So we take this, make sure we're zeroed, dump it out. We got 43.4 Geronimos. You see how it's not consistent. Like I said, if we were just making some stuff to take to the range, this would be fine. We're not going to be fine like that, though. Not with SWR rounds. We need to be right on the money, folks. So we dump a little bit out. And we put it back on the scale. Now we got 43.1. You might say to yourself, oh, that's close enough. No, not for no skeeter wing removers, it's not. So we're going to dump a little bit more out. Now we got 42.8. So now we can turn it here, come back up. 42.9. 43. 43 Geronimos right there. That's perfect. So now we're going to come back up in our cycle. Make sure we get in the middle of that collar. Come all the way up, just like that. Dump our powder in. Give it a tap. Make sure it's all in there. And we come back down. Cedar primer. We repeat the process. Brass. Yes, we got brass. Do we need a bullet? Yes, we do. Do we need powder? Yes, we need to measure some powder. So we're going to put this back on here. We're going to make sure we're zeroed. We are. We're going to dump it out. And we got 43.6 Geronimos this time. Now, like I said, normally, if I was doing a lot of rounds here, I'd back that down because it'd save us a lot of time. 43.3 Geronimos. That wasn't quite enough out. 42.9 Geronimos. We'll turn it just a little bit. 43 Geronimos, right on the mark. We're good to go. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check this round back here. We got ourselves a primer. Okay? I'm doing that because earlier, when I was running some rounds, I had a primer that was a little funky and it didn't come out right. And so I got it over here sitting to the side. So I know that I'm down to my last primer now, so I need to make sure, or should be getting pretty close to my last primer anyway. So I need to make sure I got a primer in there. So now we come up, make sure we hit that collar, and we seat. Now we dump our powder in, 43 Geronimo's worth. Give her a tap. Now we come back down. Seat our primer. Now we're good. Okay. Good news is I can see from my little, I got a little flag on here that tells me if I still got primers or not. I still got primers, so that's good. That means that we're all right. That's because I got a couple rounds out here that I pulled out that I don't have primers in. So that's why I didn't need that extra one up there, counting them out. So now, we don't have any more brass, so we can do away with brass. But now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to look. Do we need brass? Yes, but we're not putting any more brass. You can do the same process if you want to stop for the day. Let's say I've loaded some, I still got more brass left, but I'm done. I want to get done and just be done with it. Don't just leave everything lay out and make a mess. Set the brass to the side. Say I got no more brass, even if you really do. Just pretend you don't. Bullet. Yes, I got a cartridge in here that needs a bullet. So we drop that in. Do I need to measure powder? Yes, I do. We're zeroed out. We dump it out. Put the cartridge back. We got 43.5 Geronimo's. Take a little bit out. That might have been a little bit too much. We got 42.4 Geronimo's. So we're going to run it up. 42.7, 0.8, 0.9, 43 Geronimo's. Dead on. Alright, so now we're going to come up, make sure we catch that collar, bring it all the way up. It's a lot easier to go now because we ain't got one in the size and die. The size and die is where most of the resistance comes from. We're going to dump our powder in there. Give her a tap. Come back down. Now we can push down, but we ain't got nothing in there to prime now, so it doesn't really matter that much. Now we do the same process. We're not putting brass anymore. We need a bullet? Yes, we do. So we put a bullet in there. Do we need to measure powder? Yes, we do. Put it back. We got 43.5 Geronimo's again. Take out a little bit. See where we're at. We're at 42.3. So let's run her up. 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, 43.0 Geronimo's. Right on the money. So now again, we come up, make sure we hit the middle of our collar. We come all the way up. Now you'll see that the powder measure didn't move up this time. If you have a powder measure that is not like this, there are some powder measures that when you run this ramp up, it's going to actuate it, okay? Which means you're going to be dumping powder out on your floor right now because there's nothing there to catch it. Don't do that. Pull that out or turn it off or whatever you got to do. In this case, this is a special made powder measure. It's only going to dump the powder if there's a cartridge to push on it, okay? So I don't have to worry about that. You can see it didn't do anything. Powder's not going anywhere. So now we're all the way up. We got powder on our scale. We need to dump that in. Give her a tap. We come back down. Again, we don't have to see the primer because we've got nothing there. Not doing brass. Do we need a bullet? Yes, we do. Put that in. Do we need to measure powder? Yes, we do. Make sure we're zeroed. Dump it out. Put it back. We got 43.5 again. I tell you what, I'm kind of surprised that we're getting as accurate as we is with this stick powder. 42.9. And 43 Geronimo's, right on the money. So now, bring it up. Make sure we center it on that collar. All the way up. We got powder in our scale, so we dump it. Give her a tap. Come back down. We don't have to seat or primer. Now, we're not doing brass. Do we need a bullet? Yes, we do. Do we need to measure powder? No, because we don't have no cartridge in there now. So now we just bring her up. Make sure we're centered. Now I'm feeling some resistance there, so I'm going to kind of stop because I shouldn't feel any resistance. So that tells me that something ain't quite right there. There we go. That felt much better. So all I did there was I just turned the cartridge a little bit because something wasn't quite lined up. I just wanted to make sure things were lined up. Usually this does a real good job of lining things up. Every once in a while it get a little weird. Come back down. That's it. Now our press is cleared. In this case, we got no more brass. That's it. We're done. We're absolutely finished. We got our rounds here. Last round that just came off. Just double check ourselves. We zero out our scale. Put it in. Measure our ogive. And we got, in this case, 2.206. So it came up just a little bit on this one, but that's okay. That's still well within what I would consider SWR tolerances. Okay? And that's it. That's all there is to it, folks. That's how you make some SWR rounds. Now you can get out to the range, try to get there, close to the evening time when there's lots of skeeters out. Don't be spraying bug spray on another. I mean, not want to be out there, but if worse comes to worse, a couple days before, go out there with a bucket of water and dump it somewhere. Just leave it somewhere and put it down there by your targets, by your 100-yard range. Guarantee you'll have some skeeters there to shoot at. It's what me and Earl like to do for fun. It's a blast, I tell you that. So anyway, that's how you go about it. That's everything that I can think of. And like I said, we only have limited time each day, so we got to get out of here so we can, have room for the commercials and stuff. But if you have any other questions, if you have some comments, unless you're Howard, okay, unless you've moved, Howard. Once you move, you can write me another question. That's okay, but don't do it till you move. And if you is from Mon, Iam, somewhere in Maryland, don't be writing me no questions. Even if your name not Howard, I don't care. Because I don't want. In fact, if you live anywhere where the name of the town that you live in, you can't pronounce it, don't write me. Okay. Otherwise, write me. Me and Earl, we love to sit down and go through some of the letters from the fans. We really appreciate it. We do. So anyway, that's going to wrap us up for today. I hope you learned something. If there's anything else that you're a little unsure of, like I said, you can just get on there and goggle it. Have a great day and stay safe out there, folks.